Aloha, I'm DreamingBear,
And I'm Destiny.
and we want to welcome you to another episode of the Literati Experience. It's been a couple of weeks since we had a chance to sit down outside, so we thought we'd bring you to another aspect of the Chrysalis. We are at a beautiful, what they call blue lava rock wall, which we actually produced by digging it up from the driveway. And it's a kind of sacred stone, and we built this beautiful little sectional here where we do all of our beautiful stuff here. We got a magical room back here. We won't reveal its contents, but it's been such a beautiful experience this last year living at the Chrysalis. I felt like just this creative explosion, and you might also hear our puppies in the background. We have 5 little ones with us, and they're going to be making some noise because it's early in the morning. But, you know, we're at that little bit past a year mark. What's your big takeaway from having lived here at the Chrysalis?
It's been the most magical and beautiful living situation I could have ever imagined, and probably ever will have. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But it's one of a kind. It's very unique. But I feel like we're going to be creating more of these for other people to experience. You know,
Little sustainable eco villages that are both beautiful and simple but luxurious at the same time. This theme we have here is ancient Egypt meets futuristic Lemuria and the moment of now. And it's been just a beautiful thing to live the archetypical, to have all those images sort of surrounding us, this beautiful angel trumpet tree right outside the pyramid, and then your beautiful glass dome off into the distance in the forest. It's just been such a magical experience, and I'm so grateful for it. And we're so grateful to have you join us here, because it is a magical time to be alive on planet Ocean. We have been going deep into the Literati experience, and we wanted to continue to invite you guys to join us in our experience as we go through the Literati Challenge, which is an invitation to watch one video a day or every few days and take a couple of notes on what you resonate with and meditate upon it, contemplate it, let it absorb into your life, and then take the parts that work and leave the parts that don't. And it's been a beautiful experience just having that opportunity to do that with Destiny, to have that conversation between us kind of elevate our personal time as well, because you know life can get so mundane if you get caught up on the little things. But I think having this opportunity to sit and have the masculine feminine perspective on the philosophical and potential spiritual implications of what some of these thoughts are, to me they're so much more than just quotes. They're thoughts. Some of them are from diaries, some of them are from letters, some of them are from books, but they're all just really thoughts if you think about it. And when it comes to being human, that seems to be our primary means of sharing information, is through cultivating thought, writing it down, passing it on. And in that way, it's kind of eternal, as long as there are people who can understand it, right?
it's been nothing but beneficial, and hopefully to others too.
Yeah, it's like dipping your toes into many streams of consciousness and seeing what they all have to teach. But I've enjoyed it, and so we're going a little bit deeper today. We're going to have you join us on one of the newer pieces that just came out, Rudolph Steiner. And some of you may be familiar with his work. If not, he has a keen mind, a keen spiritual sense, and we're going to get right into what he has to say about the deepest mysteries of life. So what's the first thing we have from Mr. Rudolph? Fitting around December to be talking about Rudolph.
Yeah, it's true. He says, love starts when we push aside our ego and make room for someone else.
What has you got to say about that?
It's so true. You know, it's kind of easy to have a habit of thinking of yourself a lot, and then when you're with other people, you notice, you know, it takes a while for you to unveil yourself and peel back the layers, you know. But if you especially just kind of let go of judgment and any sense of criticism for anyone else, and especially yourself, it makes it so much easier to get along with someone and show true love to someone, you know?
Yeah, I think of sort of what parents have to do with their children. You know, you really got to set aside your ego and make room for this new ego that's coming into the scene without somehow, you know, imposing your will upon them, but still being a guiding force in their life. I think there's something to be said of that I think only parents can speak to on a certain level. But then when you just love someone deeply, you're willing to, I guess, compromise is the right word, because that's sort of what ego wants us to do, is have our way all the time, no matter what. And not just that, but ego can also be a very beneficial thing. You know, I mean, it can be a helpful thing in a world of many personalities, as it were, many personas. To have a strong sense of oneself, to have a confidence in oneself. I think we kind of put the ego as the villain too much. And instead of pushing it away, we should embrace it. And in embracing it, we then teach it to behave, teach it to exist within the bounds of compassion and
not just think of
understand.
yourself,
Exactly.
but think of others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right on. I think that's a good one. Okay, what else does Mr. Steiner have to tell us?
Our highest endeavor should be to develop free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction to their lives.
Free human beings who are able of themselves, of their own accord, to claim the direction and purpose of their own life. That's our highest aim, he says.
Yeah.
That's a powerful statement. Again, we come back to parenthood, I guess, but not just that. We got little ones having a morning tussle. Not just parenthood, but also just the everyday aspect of producing intelligent human beings to coexist with in a thing we call society. It seems like, you know, school. I was a college professor for several years, and I found great value in the educational system. For me, growing up in a poverty situation, it was the sort of pathway out of poverty was through education. And so I value what it had to give me, but also I realized that there is a certain standardization that takes place in the educational systems where we train people to be all very similar, and so that means the ones that really stand out no longer stand out, and the ones that kind of fall behind no longer fall behind, but we all kind of become this amalgamous, boring middle, you know? And it doesn't really inspire a lot of people, at least in standardized formats. You know, I think private schools and other kinds of schools like Waldorf and maybe even Montessori and other alternative approaches have a different outcome. But in general, I think that what he's saying is, if we could gear our society around producing creative, intelligent beings who are capable in and of their own power to claim their purpose and their destiny, that should be what we're about. I may have said too much. What else? What did you get from that?
You said it all.
Kind of took all the bases on that one. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I mean, I think it's crucial. I think it should be the most important thing to have our evolution be something that evolves us to be free and purposeful and focused in our heart's passion, and I think that should be number one priority in the schooling system, because that is how our evolution will move on in a beautiful way. You know, instead of in a controlled, locked, tight way, which makes everyone feel stuck and small compared to what they have the potential to be.
Right.
So, yeah.
And as a, you know, potential mother, what that says to me as a potential father, you as a potential mother, is that in approaching this thing of bringing a new life into the world, let's make sure we make it the most, give it all the equipment it needs to determine its own path and destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, I can down with that. What else do we got from Mr. Rudolph Steiner? Writing about 100 years ago, how much has changed since he was alive, just in these last 100 years. What he would be saying about today's society, though, still seems very relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very apropos.
The need for imagination, truth, and feeling of responsibility, these three forces are the very nerve of education, he says.
Imagination, truth, and responsibility?
Feeling of responsibility, yeah.
Wow.
The three forces that are the very nerve of education.
That's not usually what you think of when you think of the heart of our educational system, right? Mm-hmm. Imagination, didn't Einstein say, is more important than knowledge? What is your take on this particular statement? What do you get from it?
I think it's very true. Yeah. Because I've seen kids learn and be really smart in the schooling system, and they mainly focus on just the strategic side of things. I've seen students learn in a very strategic way and take on knowledge that is very, let's say, left-sided. Is that the right? Left side is very...
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just can't help but feel like there's something missing, And there's like a missing sense of innate creativity. It's like it's more of a follower than a passion to follow your own heart. I think that should come first because it teaches you who you are. If you learn how to look inwards and you learn how to imagine, and he says truth and feeling of responsibility, that takes you all down the road of self-discovery. And that is the most important thing to true education, to give you more of a whole concept of being
personal
in the world.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I think that those principles that he mentions, especially in that order, is so important because without imagination, then we have no magic. I think of the word imagination, I always think I'm a magic nation, imagination. And without it, there is no magic, really, because it's what gives childhood such a luster and a wonder. And it gets stomped out at some point through the standard educational system because they're like, I gotta learn this, really? And they're not really learning, they're getting crammed information and not, to take a test they're gonna forget 10 minutes later.
It's very boring.
Yeah, there's no passion in it. But also the values of honesty and of, what was the last one? Responsibility. So important. So important. It develops character. It helps us create the kind of people that we're talking about here in this particular context. All right. What else we got, Mr. Steiner?
Develop your soul senses as well as your physical senses.
I thought that was really important, that it's not enough to be physically fit, but one must be spiritually fit. And if you ask yourself, what is a soul sense? The ancient Egyptians believed that we have a 360-degree field of senses, that we didn't just have the five senses we're familiar with, say, the sight, the sound, the taste, the touch, all that kind of stuff. It was more a field of senses, and it came in a 360-degree field. And so I wonder, what is it that we've lost connection to that they were aware of? And it all goes back to the pineal. It all goes back to an understanding of the as above, so below, that truth running parallel to itself in all things is the reality of existence, and that if you maintain a spiritually fit system, right? That's what it brings up for me. What about for you?
I think I mean, in a way, he's kind of saying the law of as above, so below. You know, like, if you create something inside of you, that will manifest externally, more so than the opposite. You know, it always starts within. And so if you focus on that, focus on the inward, developing your soul senses, you know, then you will be able to see more clearly, hear more clearly in the physical experience.
Right.
You know,
It's like you're building spiritual muscle, you know. And okay, this is poetry, everybody. Say hi, poetry. He just wants to be loved. If you create resistance, and this is what, you know, we hate about life, but it's also what gives life purpose, is this resistance. And some of us call it struggle, some of us call it challenge, some of us call it tragedy, some of us call it whatever we want to call it. But really, it's just resistance that makes us stronger. Without resistance, we get flabby and weak. You know, that's just the way it goes. But muscle memory is a real thing. If you develop muscle and then you kind of get out of shape, it's a lot easier to get back in shape because your muscle actually has a memory. A spiritual muscle is something that we need to exercise. The memory itself, remembering, is a big part of that. You know, the ancient indigenous tribes of Australia, the Aboriginal, they had a rich tradition of a multilingual memorization of the oral history of existence. And they would use these to create what they called song lines, which were songs that they would sing in a certain cadence, a sort of a long poem form. And that would give them navigational capabilities across the entire continent of Australia.
wow.
And so that's a way of using memory, combining it with, and expand across several dozen linguistic spaces. So they didn't just memorize it in their own language, they had to memorize it in the tribes of other people as well. And I think memory is a big muscle that we might also begin to work and rework and get into shape, because without memory, very little matters.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true.
I've made that memory is the mother of all muses in the ancient Greek mythology tradition. Memory actually gave birth to all the other muses, to music, to poetry, to all the things that the muses create, art, dance. Memory was the birther of all those things. That's a metaphor for something. So give some thought to your memory and how to develop it. Anything you want to add? No? Okay, what else do we got from Mr.?
Feelings are for the soul what food is for the body.
Since you're good at feelings and food, I'll let you start with this one.
You are too.
Of course, but you're the sort of food master. What did it bring up for you?
It's interesting. It's like when you think of feelings, it seems like such a wide subject, because there's so many feelings, and there's some that you can name, but there's also a lot that you can't name, you know, and everyone has their own sense of a feeling. And it's something that if you learn to flow with and not resist, it teaches you something. You know, it teaches you that feelings come and go. They're not who you are, but they teach you something along the way when they come. And that is kind of like what food is for the body. You know, it's it comes and goes. it is crucial. You know, we can't live without feeling. It's nourishing to us, but it's not who we are. You know, we are more than that, but we still rely on it in a way. You know.
Right. Yeah, I get that we exist in the dimension of feeling, that what we call the third dimension is actually a dimension of feeling, and that feeling itself, that each individual feeling is a particular dimension that we step into. Like a house, if you were to step into a house and you were to touch the walls, if we could get more acquainted with the dimensionality of our feeling, the depth of it, the height of it, the width of it, and really the tactile sensation spiritually that comes from being in the dimension of feeling, then I would think that we would realize, at least what I've come to understand from that experience, is that thought plus feeling equals prayer to the universe. It's not just sitting here saying words and asking whatever it is you believe in for something, but it's our thoughts married to our feelings that become a prayer to existence, whether we're aware of it or not. And so I try to keep my thoughts like a garden that I prune, that I take care of. That's why this Literati series is so valuable in that regard, because it allows me to add flowers in and take flowers out. But more than anything, it gives me this chance to cultivate the inner world in a way that is expressible as a kind of living prayer, so that it's not just about asking for what I need, but thinking and feeling it into existence. You identify with that at all?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, it's something that you strengthen as you get older. I feel you're a lot older than me, so.
I'm a lot older.
Not a lot, but you know.
I'm 95, y'all. Cheers, here's to life. Big green juice to keep me going. Maybe I'll make it to 105.
No, I mean, even a few years, more experience, you know, gets you more strength in the area of how to live.
Depending on how you take the experience, of course. Like, you can go through all kinds of crap. I always think about this, that certain people can go through all kinds of crap and they come out worse than before. And certain people can go through that same crap and they come out stronger than before. And what that tells me is that it's all about resilience in the end. It's about how resilient are you willing to be with life, to get knocked down, to get back up, to dust yourself off, and be willing to say, no matter what, I'm never giving up. That's what my grandmother used to tell me. She'd say, baby, no matter what, never give up. And every time I ever thought about giving up, I would always hear her warm vanilla sugar voice telling me not to give up. And it was an encouragement. All right, what do you think at home? Give us some comments down below. Let us know what your thoughts are on this subject. In the meantime, what else does Mr. Steiner have to tell us?
Art is eternal. Their shapes are changing.
That's sort of an abstract statement. What did that bring up for you?
It means so much, because it reminds me of nature. You know, if you sit and observe nature, you can see that there's always an art. In every moment, there's an art. But it's also always changing in every moment. You know, the trees are growing taller, the leaves changing shape, and I mean, everything's always changing, but the art is always present, and I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, there's no real better artist than nature. It seems like all of our art is a sort of imitation of nature. Some of the best art, like when you see something artistic, it's usually a mimicry of sorts of what nature produces very easily and naturally. And yet I can't help but to think that as the source of existence in skin, here for this experience, that each of us are simultaneously capable of that same creative power that nature is a placeholder for. That same inherent genius. The word genius means the genie within, who can grant all wishes, if you think about it, the genie within. And that's what it brings up for me, that the eternal force of creativity is within us. The forms will change across time, across cultures, across sexes, across ideologies, but the genius remains the same and accessible to all. I think Steiner says at some point in this piece that every one of us carry the mechanisms within us to achieve greatness. We all carry the mechanisms for spiritual attunement, but it's about becoming familiar with those mechanisms that we've sort of forgotten the language for, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to say about that? Anything?
I think if we learn to be more connected with nature, our natural essence will also arise.
Through that sort of remembrance that before nature was a mother, we like to think of Mother Nature. I think of nature as being initially a star-crossed lover, like a Romeo and Juliet type thing, you know. And that nature is both the nurturer, but it's also the passion creator. It's the storms. And to be in alignment with nature is to be in alignment with one's own nature. That double entendre there. You know?
Yeah.
All right, we got a few minutes left. We're going to continue our little journey here. Hope you're enjoying hearing from Rudolph Steiner. I know for me it was a blessing to come across some of these thoughts and find some resonance. What else does he have to tell us? Anything else?
Where is the book in which the teacher can read about what teaching is? The children themselves are this book.
Ooh. Yeah. What does that say to you?
I think that's a really good lesson for teachers and parents, and it's kind of it brings everything back to the fundamentals of teaching. You know, if you realize that while you're teaching, you're also learning. You know, and you're learning how to teach even better with every teaching, you know, and you start to really connect with what's around you when you believe that, and you start to be more open to what's around you, and not coming from a place of I know, but coming from a place of I don't know everything, you know. What's your side of the perspective? I'd love to hear that, because that's what it's all about. It's about sharing perspectives, and that is what creates the web of life, and that is something that is forever teaching and learning.
Yeah, we're all an open book to a certain extent, right? And if we think of the metaphor of being an open book, and he's saying, you know, who's going to tell the teacher how to be a good teacher? Obviously not some standardized format from a workbook, but the child itself is the format, is the blueprint for what it needs. And this is why standardized education, again, doesn't work, because we're all individuals. We're not cattle. We can't all be branded with the same design. Each of us learn in a different way. Some of us are, and we should be put in a situation where we can excel in the areas that we naturally excel in, and improve in the areas that we don't, of course. But individuation, again, comes back to creating beings capable of claiming their own purpose and destiny, and that's no small order. That's no small order. It's really a big aspiration to say, let's create beings who can determine the course and direction of their own lives, and he calls it the self-destiny, the expression of self-destiny. You know, this is such a powerful experience to achieve for yourself, to decide this is what I want in life, and then to go out and through the power of thinking and feeling to manifest that. That's a powerful thing. Okay, we got time for just one more. If you look through these last few, what else do we have here? Anything really reaching out to you? While she looks for that, I want to remind you at home that for me, you know, we started the Literati series because I felt like what we need as a culture is to be a literary people. There's something about literature. There's something about, and this is through doing several literacy to end poverty events, I realized it's sort of a common thread amongst human beings. We all think, we all feel, and we all have a tendency to write those thoughts and feelings down. And in that way, to come to a kind of true communication, which I think is what the series is really all about, for us at least. We're coming to a true communication with each other. We're inviting you in to this conversation that has no choreography. And I think that it's a valuable thing. So I hope you're enjoying it so far. What else did you find from Mr. Steiner? How are we going to end this? What's this? Is that a good one?
Do you think so?
You tell me. You're the mother of all good things good here.
We suffer because with every inner and outer suffering, we eliminate one of our faults and transform into something better.
That's a good one. That's a good one to end on. Oh, why do we suffer? We suffer to improve upon ourselves, to eliminate one of our faults, and to become a better being in that process. Wow, that puts a whole new twist on resistance and challenge and suffering, right? It's more of a art form, right? It's more of a way of approaching the world and life so that it's not a pain in the ass, but an opportunity to create, right? Poetry? He knows what I'm talking about here. He's gonna stay here and get his love no matter what. He's like, I am poetry, you will love me. What does it bring up for you?
I think it's something that we not only take personally, but we can take as a society. You know, when we suffer as a society and as a community, that's only a lesson for us to change something. You know, look at something a different way, do something differently. You know, it's something that creates evolution, not just with us personally, but as a world. You know, we do suffer because we are still making mistakes, and that is the process of learning and evolving. You know, and unfortunately, suffering is just the process of life, you know, but it always leads to something better.
Yes, suffering is a relative way of using that experiential word. I mean, it can be suffering, just like a tattoo can be really painful, or it can be really pleasurable. It really depends on how you choose to perceive the inputs, right? So for me, suffering doesn't have to be suffering. Suffering can be opportunity to express grace, opportunity to meet myself in the ways that I want to meet myself, and reflection points at which we can gauge where we're really at spiritually, not without judgment of ourselves or anything else. We can just sort of say, oh, well, I didn't really weather this really small event very well. I'm not obviously doing my spiritual fitness isn't complete because I'm still getting caught up on tiny things, or whatever the case, whatever our particular measurement for ourselves are. And it's not about competing with ourselves or anyone else, but having the honesty, as he said, the responsibility of oneself, and being honest about that responsibility with oneself, because you can only be truthful to yourself. You and spirit know the truth. You can hide from anyone else, but you can't hide from you or spirit, right? And the imagination to see beyond all that and go into a new way of being.
Yeah.
And eliminate as many faults as you can along the way, without necessarily intending to eliminate the faults, but loving them while you have them.
Makes me think, though, you know, suffering kind of comes from the perspective of fear.
Mm.
You know, when you're fearing something and then you kind of create something to happen to you from that state of fear, and then you suffer because of the fear. If we rise above the perspective of fear, then that creates less suffering, because if you see from the point of awareness, you see that suffering leads to something better. It's for a reason. And in that seeing kind of takes you out of the suffering. It kind of takes you out of the body of suffering. So it's something that we are in the process of learning to overcome and evolve. And in the process, you know.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, I think what my big takeaway from Steiner is that our spiritual life is as much, if not slightly more important than our external life, because it's from that spiritual source that we get all of our inspiration, all of our motivation, all of our impetus to live, our libido, or our impulse to life itself. And I think that he's saying, take ownership of that power. The same great power that exists in all the universe exists in you, if you can work the spiritual muscle to manifest the energies behind that power and to harness them in a way, through your attitude, through your thinking, through your sense of responsibility to yourself and the world around you, and to those who come after you, but also to those who we share society with. If we could apply these principles to social media, if we could apply these principles to the things that we watch at night before we go to bed, or the things that we, the junk food ideas that we sort of subsist upon. We live in a virtual desert of nutrition as it is in the physical world, where we become supermarket hunter-gatherers, right? We go into these giant artificially processed food factories and we try to eke out some kind of real food out of the mess that is junk food. But we do the same thing with our mind, with our heart, with our soul, in taking in concepts and ideas that were never designed to nurture our souls or spirits or imaginations in the first place. But like violence, it's so amazing to me that violence is in every single movie you watch. Even something like Avatar has tremendous violence. We can't tell a narrative without violence, and yet scenes of love are so infrequent and almost taboo in society. People showing affection, oh no, let's not show that. People shooting each other, let's show that so much that it becomes numb, right? But I think that if we were to apply these principles, we'd be looking at a much different society, a society full of potential and power to make that potential a reality.
Definitely.
What's your big takeaway from Mr. Steiner here as we close out?
Let's learn how to be better teachers to ourselves so that we can be better teachers to the world.
Yes, be better teachers to ourselves so that we can be better teachers to the world. That means being the best student we can be in the meantime, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I love having these little conversations with you.
Me too.
Thanks for taking the challenge. Thank you, beloveds. We hope you've enjoyed our journey that we took today out here in nature. Forgive our little interruptions from our animals. I'm sure that they're endearing to you as they are to us. And in the meantime, remember, this is your moment to create your life the way you see fit. Viva l'evolution. Viva Literati. Aloha.
Aloha.